But if you let that product simmer instead of just get warm, you're going to mess it up. And if you let it stay on too far beyond simmering, it's going to come to a boil because you've let it stay too long. That's the same as in resting on a problem that you don't address right away. It's going to start going from warm. That's at the beginning stage when you first recognize it. It's going to simmer when you start to just kind of continue to notice the pattern. And then it's going to come to a boil when you're getting ready to blow up and go off on the individual. Welcome to Platinum Conversations in the Platinum Cafe. Today, we wish to engage you on a journey of enlightenment and hopefully growth that will propel you into higher levels of attainment in the thing that's meaningful to you in your life. Let's go. We're just dealing with ideas around what is the purpose of vision, how to create a vision, and what are those steps? Because I think so often it starts with a thought or an idea, but that thought and the idea means nothing if there's no action behind it. And so the whole visioning process has to have action steps that move you towards an eventual reality or what have you. And so that whole idea again of looking at why do I feel lost and why do I feel like my life is not moving in a positive direction or even moving at all and just feeling stagnated and in one place. I can look at my own life in terms of there was portions of my life when I felt like I was just running in place and I wasn't making any progressive movements. I wasn't getting any raises in my job. I wasn't seeing myself advancing beyond that particular stage.
Talk about that. Where were you at?
Well, I was a recruiter at the time at the Seattle Times. And so while it was a high paying job and it was a job that was so routine that I began to feel stagnated in that routine. And the people that I spoke with every day were the same people. The interactions were pretty much the same. And so I got into this pattern of behavior of being satisfied on one level, but knowing that I could do and become so much more. And so one of the things that I began to do was start to see myself in other roles. And so I began to then go out and create business opportunities for myself and leveraging my learned experiences as a recruiter and as a policy developer or what have you in HR. And so I started training and consulting. And one of the first contracts that I got was for a LASIK vision organization that was just starting in Renton. And because they were just starting and I was just starting, we bartered. And so I got the laser surgery for free and I created an employee handbook for the organization for free. And so we basically exchanged professional services. And that's one way to get out of a rut. And one way to create an opportunity is learn what things other people have that you need, especially when you're starting out and you don't have the capital and you don't have all of the tools that you need to really build a successful platform. You start where you are and start looking at how do I leverage the learning and the opportunities that I have to get me to that next stage.
But that's the thing. A lot of like we were just saying, a lot of people don't know where they're lost. So they don't know where they are. So if you're not sure where you are, how do you find yourself?
Well, the thing is to know that you're looking, because so often we get stuck and we start wanting something, but we either don't know where to look, how to look, what to look for, because we don't always know the things that we need. Or if we know, we're afraid to ask for them. Because sometimes when we're asking for things, it makes us appear to be unprepared, not ready, incapable. And so we have all of these narratives that we feed ourselves and we tell ourselves on a consistent basis, and we begin to believe our own negative self-talk. And that paralyzes us. That's a type of analysis paralysis, so to speak. And so when we begin to see ourselves in a certain manner because of the conditioning, then we begin to act that out in the ways that we approach things. And we begin to believe that I can only work for someone else and not for myself. I can only go to that job because that's all I know. I can only be a mom or a dad or what have you, and then we become singularly focused on just doing what we need to do to get by, and never create the opportunity to thrive in the environments that we're in.
It seems like, you could be so wrapped up in your role, or you could be so wrapped up in the problems that you have that you're not really looking at what's my identity, where can I go from here? And if you can't see where you are at and you want somebody to help coach you through a situation, give us a call. You're listening to the Platinum Hitter Podcast. We're here live. I'm Dietrich J. I'm here with Rob Britton, and we are missing our counterpart today, Tony Grace. He's out on vacation. He's earned it. So we're holding it down for you today. And we're talking about vision right now. Yeah, Rob. And sometimes when it's like you can't see your own problems because you're so close to the problem yourself.
Yes.
And that's where having somebody else can come in and say, hey, you can't see yourself. You don't know where you are, but I can see where you are. And this is where you could be. And let's talk about how you can get there. But I did have a question about just formulating the vision. How do you feel about when it comes to vision boards or journaling or just overall daydreaming or like constructive daydreaming, if you will, to try and see yourself out of a situation? Like if you're right now and you're like, I just don't know. I don't know which way I can go. I don't know what I can do. I'm in this job. I like the job. The job pays well, but it's kind of boring. What would be like the first step somebody should take to begin to determine where they're at and where they want to go?
Right. Well, before I answer that question, I want to double back for a second and address an whole idea of trust. In what we tend to do, I'll back that up as well. What I have tended to do in the past was to not trust the knowledge and the wisdom that I had learned over the years. And again, we've said this in a previous episode or what have you, but we can give the best advice to other people and it'd be spot on. But we fail to trust ourselves enough to give ourselves and take our own advice. And so and that basically says that I trust the knowledge that I have that relates to you, but not to myself. And so what we will learn as we move through the process of developing a vision is that what's true for you can also be true for me. And so the advice that we're often giving really can apply to us if we choose to accept it. And that's a choice. And to kind of look at the whole idea of the vision boards and formulating a vision, daydreaming, all of those components or what have you, I'll give you a bit of wisdom that was given to me through the scripture. Write the vision and make it plain. And so writing the vision out, make it plain, means to keep it simple. We don't have to try and complicate the process. Getting a new start, a fresh start, is not about creating a whole new platform. It's about utilizing the resources that you have and build upon that so that everything becomes clear and it is interconnected. And so I think that the scattered aspect of our thinking sometimes gives us the appearance that we're moving in different directions. But we have to start to look for the signs of intersectionality in all of our thoughts and find the way by which to join or blend thoughts or what have you that are leading us towards these various directions. And always remember that when you're building a platform for success in whatever capacity, get out of the mindset that it's you going about it alone. We have to learn to align ourselves with the right people, opportunities, and resources that will catapult us. You see, because when you find yourself marching down a path and you're marching at a certain pace and or cadence. But when you align yourself with other people, that's when the catapult comes in and you begin to experience exponential growth, because the other persons in your life can add value to the things that you're doing that will help make the vision plain, clear, and attainable.
And so the opposite is also true. if you're hanging around people that don't have vision, or you're hanging around people that are not looking to add value, they're always weighing you down, always talking negatively, saying, hey, we're always going to be here, they have that fixed mindset, then they can keep you from really achieving your true potential as well. I wanted to go back just a little bit to where you mentioned not trusting your own advice and being able to see where other people are and being able to speak to their situation, but not being able to speak to your own. Do you think that has anything to do with self-esteem and just not trusting what, your own thoughts for yourself?
Very much so. That's one of the components of that. But again, that's learned behavior. And so we've learned over time, over the experiences of our lives, to think that way about ourselves. And when we began to develop those patterns, we began to attach ourselves, our self-worth, or our identities to other people. And then when those people depart from us or leave, then we begin to feel isolated or feel lost, so to speak, because all that we saw of ourselves were in that other person. And so we have to learn the process of reinventing ourselves with our own personal identity. And part of that identity is really recognizing the intrinsic value that you bring to the table, that you bring to the relationship, the value that you add to the family, the value that you mean to your work group. And so without you, surely they could possibly go on, but they won't go in the same manner, because nobody's going to add the specific flavor that you bring to the table. And it's like a chef. A chef is cooking these great meals, and they're adding all of these different ingredients that makes the product or make the end result something that is delectable, that is just out of this world. And so it becomes a signature dish for this particular chef, and everybody wants it. But if you leave one ingredient out, it's not the same.
It's missing.
Exactly. And people will taste that there's something missing. And so when you are not part of your own success, there's something missing. And so when you become that missing ingredient that makes everything work, then you begin to recognize your value.
Some chefs out there are cooking up their own success, but they're missing ingredients.
Yes.
And they don't know what ingredients they're missing. They just know that they're just not getting the results that they want.
Yes.
But a good chef, to stay with the analogy, a good chef knows what they want. A good chef's going to know, no, it should taste like this. I need more salt. I need more sugar. I need more flour. It should have this kind of acidity to it. It should have this kind of a bite to it when I get in there, because I know how it's going to mix with all the other foods on the plate. Right. And so a good chef really knows what they want. And so I would say that if you are looking at developing a vision, you have to determine what it is that you want. And a lot of times we get sidetracked because, like you said, you could have your identity wrapped up in a role that you have or somebody that you're with, and they're dictating to you, okay, this is what you want, this is what you need to do for yourself, because that's the value you add to that person, not necessarily the value that you bring for yourself. And so when that person is gone, you don't have anybody feeding into you to say, oh, this is what I want. We want, the chicken nuggets and the French fries, because they were making those decisions. But now you find yourself in a position of power where you have to make that decision for yourself, and you don't know what you want. You don't know what it's supposed to taste like because you haven't been the chef before. So my question to you would be, if somebody now finds themselves as the chef, how do they go about accepting that authority and not falling back into the same trap of finding just another person to cook for them?
Well, the thing that we have to understand about the mindset of a chef owns his kitchen. Anybody just can't come in a chef's kitchen and do what they think they want to do. They have to have an invitation to come in. And when that invitation comes, it's because there's a certain level of respect that one chef has towards another. And so again, when we just invite anybody into our space to feed us and to give us advice on certain things, we're going to then begin to absorb what they present to us. And so when to kind of look at, when you mentioned that the chef knows what the product is supposed to taste like, the proper amount of acidity and all of this thing. And all of that is also dependent upon the audience they are preparing the dish for. And so how do you get the same dish to taste the same way, whether you're preparing for a diabetic, preparing for someone that's vegan, preparing for someone that's a carnivore? So all of these different components, and you have to be able to get that same texture, that same flavor, that same aroma, regardless of what. Therefore, you have to know what the alternatives are. And so you may have to use a salt substitute, a sugar substitute. You have to have a dairy substitute. You may have to use a soy product versus a meat product. And so you have to learn all of these different components to make that product still be the same for no matter who the audience is.
So bring that back down for me, because that one is a little bit over my head. Okay. So we're looking at different ingredients for different audiences.
Right.
So how do we relate that to the person trying to find their vision, and the chef knowing who's in your kitchen, and what was the last part? Just knowing who you're cooking for.
Right. Well, part of that process is really in understanding. I'll give you an example in terms of you and I. If we're talking about self-improvement for the two of us, something that I say that has worked for me may not ring true for you, but you know that it doesn't ring true. But if you accept it and it doesn't ring true, then therein you're beginning to acclimate yourself. You're shifting and adapting to something that may not fit into your paradigm, so to speak. And so when we begin to accept the advice, the information from people whose views we may not necessarily agree with, our vision will remain cloudy. But once it begins to sink in and say, I identify. And so we have to find out what's that point of identification so that it makes sense, that it makes me want to go out and do it well, so that I can become better, stronger, faster, whatever that thing is that I'm looking to do, so that my vision becomes clearer.
So if I'm a vegetarian and you come in my kitchen and I let you cook and you start cooking meat, I'm gonna mess around and get the bubble guts because my body not used to processing meat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And you know what that is. You know what you need. And if we one of the first things we have to develop is courage. Courage to speak what we need and not just accept what is presented to us on a tray. And so there may be some things on there that you can use, but you can't eat the things that don't match with your diet or what your body needs. Because what we find is that, oh man, and this is really good stuff, because when the tray comes out and you find that you have things on the tray that you definitely cannot eat, someone giving you the tray will say, well, I'll just move this aside. How about if I take that off and leave everything else? If you accept that, then you're accepting cross-contamination. And so the thing you are trying to avoid is still there, because they only just removed it, but the residue of it is still there. And it can have the same impact as if the item itself was present. And so we have to learn to reject the entire thing and start anew.
I was talking to Christina last night about assertiveness and aggressiveness, because I go back and forth with people sometimes about, man, I kind of needed this done and it didn't get done, right? Or, man, I thought we should have headed in this direction. I had the vision going in this direction. They had the vision going in that direction, and I didn't speak up. And so sometimes little problems become big problems. And then by the time it becomes a big problem and I have to say something, I'm coming from a place of aggression.
Right.
And I have to tone it back because I don't want to offend, when we should have just handled it when it was small. Right. But what me and Christina were talking about was the difference between being assertive and being aggressive.
Sure.
And just having the mind to go, okay, because for me personally, I'm normally a calm and pretty reserved person. I don't really come out the shell too much.
Right.
And so for me to go from calm to assertive, that would be different than me going from calm to aggressive and then dialing it back to assertive, right? The whole idea is to not let it get to the point where I have to be aggressive, because that aggression can harm relationships.
Right.
And so how do you go about, if you're not an assertive person who would say, hey man, you bringing meat on my plate and I don't want this cross-contamination. How would you go about telling that person who is normally calm and would say passive in this sense, to say, you don't need to be aggressive, but you need to realize that this is a moment where you need to assert yourself. And I guess the other question is, what is the difference between assertive and aggressive?
Well, and to keep the same analogy that we're in terms of the food or what have you, let's just say you're preparing a dish and it requires you to warm the product that you're going to be adding to something else. And let's say that the product you're going to be adding to something else is is in liquid form, so to speak. And so what you want to do is add that warm product. And so you put it at a certain heat level to get it to warm. But if you let that product simmer instead of just get warm, you're going to mess it up. And if you let it stay on too far beyond simmering, it's going to come to a boil because you've let it stay too long. That's the same as in resting on a problem that you don't address right away. It's going to start going from warm. That's at the beginning stage when you first recognize it. It's going to simmer when you start to just kind of continue to notice the pattern. And then it's going to come to a boil when you're getting ready to blow up and go off on the individual. And so the thing is to recognize at what stage or what temperature the item is at that you need to add to whatever it is that you're doing. And the other piece is, I'll give you this example because it came in very... When we did our training for our men on Friday of last week, I did this treat. And I asked people to come up, and I gave them an idea or the examples of what the tree represents. And the tree, the limbs have a role, the branches have a role, the leaves have a role, the fruit have a role, the trunk has a role, and the roots have a role. And so I asked them to identify, based on the definitions that I presented, where they saw themselves on this tree. And so the whole idea is, if I see myself as a leaf, I have no business trying to tell the branch how to function. And if I'm a leaf, I have no problem looking at the roots and say, hey, roots, grow more, grow faster, or what have you. And so we have to learn who we are and what we are and stay in that role. And so when you look at the advice that you're asking for in terms of, or the growth that you're looking for, recognize the role that you play in your growth, but don't try to overstep your bounds too soon, because there are certain things you're going to grow into based on the information that you receive.
So if I got a leaf, and I'm a branch, and I'm like, okay, this leaf trying to tell me how to be a branch, and I don't need that leaf ingredient in my branch business.
Right.
How do I tell that leaf without destroying the relationship? Because the branch needs the leaf, the leaf needs the branch, but we can't necessarily we can't interrupt each other's function. Right. And so how does the branch tell the leaf, hey man, this ain't gonna work?
You have to be strong enough to hold on to your position. That's the thing. And I'll give you an example in this, to this and what have you. And it's something that we may have spoken of in a previous broadcast as well. But the wind has an effect on the tree, on the leaves of the tree, on the fruit of the tree. And so there are times when a strong wind would come and it'll take the leaves and or the fruit, cause some to drop to the ground, but it'll cast some in a far distance away from the tree. But oftentimes there's that one leaf that keeps holding on. No matter what storm comes, no matter how strong it is, in the middle of winter, there's still one leaf that's still hanging on the tree. And that one leaf is saying, I'm not going to be moved. I'm not going to let you dictate where I go. He has a Jacob kind of mentality. I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. And so we have to know what we want, know who we are, know what our role is, and stay in that role. And so, but you have to be strong enough to hold on until you get what you want.
And you have to be strong enough to reject what you don't need.
Exactly.
To turn it away.
Yes. And so it's like if you don't believe in something, you fall for anything. That's one of them things. And so we have to start developing a mindset or a process of identification. How do we identify what we are what we need based on who we are? How to identify what we need based on who we are. Because as you evolve in your thinking, who you are may change. And who you become will be different. But you have to give yourself permission to really evolve into those different versions of yourself until you reach peak performance.
I hear a lot of what you're talking about is having the knowledge, having the wisdom, the understanding. And when I think about assertive aggressive, I think of assertive being, well, both of them, you're trying to prove a point. You're trying to establish a boundary.
Yes.
And assertiveness does that with knowledge. Assertiveness does that with wisdom and understanding and compassion and love. Right. And there's still this mutual give and take. The relationship is not broken. But the aggression is kind of is abrasive.
Right.
And so it damages the relationship. And it's not necessarily done in wisdom, because the branch could eject the leaf, so to speak, or the leaf could reject the branch, so to speak, but then they both lose something. Right. And so it's just a matter of approaching the situation from this perspective of we're on the same team. We want the same things. We might disagree about the process here. And yeah, that was really good.
But, and also just to really tie into that or what have you, as far as that, when we have like for instance, if someone is ill and they are looking for something in their body is failing to function as it should. And so the doctor recommends a transplant. And so sometimes you can get a donor that appears to be a perfect match, but the body rejects that particular organ and you have to start over again. And so sometimes when we're looking to grow, sometimes we get information that we should reject. We don't receive everything just because it comes in. But again, therein lies emotional intelligence. Therein lies the opportunity to recognize our strength. Therein lies the opportunity to say, you know what, I appreciate that and I can see where it could be beneficial, but it's not what I need right now. And then be able to, again, redirect what you're receiving so that it takes, and then you can heal.
That's so key. That's so key. The power of no.
Yes.
The simple power of no, thank you. Or just no.
Exactly.
That's a complete sentence. No.
Yeah.
Right? And I think what you said is spot on. We're going to wrap it up right here. This has been another fabulous episode of the Platinum Hitter Podcast. If you want to hear more inspiring messages and great content, be sure to check us out on www.platinumhitter.com, on all major social media websites at Platinum Hitter. And if you want to stay connected or contact us directly, you can text PH to 31996. Until next time, make it platinum.
Have a platinum day, family.